Introduce Dr. Ladi Balakefi, MNI, Acting Director, Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. A pleasure to welcome you once again.
Thank you.
Let me also welcome here in the studio Professor Uche Waleke, who is Professor of Capital Markets at the Nasarawa State University. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Victor.
Maybe
Good morning, Nigeria.
We should also mention it's the first time Prof is looking this way, and we appreciate it. Honestly.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
All right, many thanks. Also joining us for the conversation is Professor Joshua Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship, and also the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Academics, Kaduna State University. Many thanks for joining us, Prof.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. We're best to begin, but with the CBN. So I'll just simply say, attempted justification for the decisions of the MPC.
Thank you for having the central bank here once again. And the justification for us retaining, holding, is can largely be attributed to the fact that we had hiked for the whole of 2024. And before you see the effect of your policies, it takes a while. There's a lag period. Mm-hmm. So, and we were beginning to see the impact of the previous decisions that the MPC had taken. We've started seeing the results in the economy. And yes, you're going to ask?
Yeah, when you say impact, I mean, what kind of impact?
Okay, for example, the exchange rate is a significant way in which inflation passes through, is a channel that inflation passes through. There's a pass-through through the exchange rate. And exchange rate has moderated. It's stable. The stability of the exchange rate is very critical to the Nigerian economy because we are an import-dependent economy, and then we export crude oil. So and all the trade that we undertake, they are all denominated in the dollar. So once you have that stability, businesses can price their goods knowing that the raw materials they're bringing in, the cost of it will be at a stable exchange rate. And also, we do not produce enough food that we consume in the country. So the fiscal sector, in the collaborative effort with the monetary sector, and also to ensure that they deliver their own duty as welfare providers to the citizens, they imported food to avert food insecurity. So that exchange rate stability that arose from the MPC decisions really helped in curbing inflation. You may see that headline inflation, so you can see following the rebasing exercise, inflation came down, but even if it had not been rebased, inflation would have been 1%. And then we had seen some gains month on month in some, like on food inflation, there were some gains by over 2%, the deceleration in inflation, on food inflation, as well as core inflation. Because in core inflation, there's been downward pricing of energy, because Dangote lowered his price. So it's both fiscal and monetary authorities collaborated, and we started seeing the impact in the economy. So based on that, the decision to hold. When you hold, it's not as if you have loosened. It's just that you're maintaining your stance so that you further observe how situations.
So what you're saying is that the tightening measures will continue, probably in the next MPC meeting. We're likely to see more tightening.
Everything that the central bank does and the Monetary Policy Committee, all they do is largely dependent on data that we have available to us. So we look at data. We don't come up with decisions just offhand. We have data that we collect from all sectors, the 4 sectors of the economy, the financial sector data, the external sector data, the fiscal sector data, and the monetary sector. We gather them, and then we do our simulation exercises, and that is how we derive the decisions.
When you say data, how credible, are these data? One would want to ask, really, because when you quote these figures, they don't really match with reality on the ground.
I will disagree with you there, because I even saw on Arise TV yesterday market women being interviewed. Maybe the NTA should go to the market and do some interviews.
No, of course, we have interviewed.
So, and what we've heard is prices of food are going down. Of course, there are some staple foods that are still up, like Irish potatoes, but the basic, generally, prices have been coming down. Prices of food have been coming down.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Balakefi. Let me get to Professor Waleke. How, in your opinion, will this decision affect borrowing, for instance, for both individuals and businesses?
Yeah, thank you, Victor. I start by saying that the decision to hold by the MPC was expected. Yes, it didn't come to me as a surprise at all. And that's also why you find that not virtually, all the 12 members that attended the meeting, voted to hold. On the strength of some of the reasons, she has advanced, because basically the central bank is looking at what is happening to exchange rate. It's also looking at the inflation expectation. Okay, when the central bank, for example, there is one study I saw by the central bank. A central bank conducts a study, a business expectation study, for example, where businesses are expecting that inflation rate will moderate in a particular year. That will certainly inform their decisions, not to further tighten. Okay, so I think largely the decision to hold, for me, marks the end of an era of an aggressive, tightening stance. So I want to expect that going forward, going into as we make progress in the year, and as some of these, macro variables become more stable, the MPC may even consider loosening. Okay, for me, I think we have seen, at least for now, we've seen the end of the tightening. Now, how would it affect, cost of borrowing? Of course, you know that when you have the monetary policy rate is more like the anchor for interest rates. If you look at the CBN's guidelines, okay, for charges, it says there that if a bank is lending, the cost of the interest rate charged is negotiable, but should be anchored on the monetary policy rate. So the monetary policy rate determines the rate at which banks lend. Because what is it in the first place? Monetary policy rate is the rate, simply put, the rate at which the central bank lends money to the deposit money banks. So if the central bank is lending to you at 27.5, which is the monetary policy rate, of course, plus 5, the corridor, okay, you can only lend money, at a rate that is higher. So when you have higher policy rates, it also translates to higher lending rates. Right. So how will this now affect lending? When you hold, it means interest rates will not yes, they're stable, and of course it but
there are other factors.
It creates room for planning. Okay, yes, these factors are, of course, there. When I say when you hold, of course it is all other factors, staying constant. Yes, of course, if you hold rates or you reduce rates, okay, all other factors remaining ceteris paribus, you also expect that cost of funds will come down, and then access to credit, will improve, and that should also translate into improved output. Okay, so generally speaking, okay, low interest rate environments, promotes output. But part of why you find the central bank, increasing policy rates is when central bank has reason to believe that, too much money out there is also complicating, the issue of prices, including exchange rates, because when you have too much money out there, part of it also goes to chase the scarce forex, okay, and exchange rate rises, and just as she said, if exchange rate rises, you have the pass-through of that to, again, inflation.
So in your own view, you just said low interest rate promotes output. Would you say 27.5% is fair enough?
No, 20, of course, is high. It's high. That's why I told you that going forward, I would want that rate to be, to come down. If you look at sub-Saharan Africa, okay, if you take the average, Nigeria is about the highest. Ghana has 27%, interest rate. So ours is 27.5, and it's not just 27.5. There is, if you add the what we call the corridor is 500 basis points. That's plus 5. Okay, that means the lending rate is actually over 30%. That the central bank, gives to the
all right, many thanks.
So it is of course high, and it is high. I told you why it is high. It is high because of where we are coming from. The fact that over the years we've had so much printing of money, that happened in ways, what they call ways and means, and central bank had been increasing because of the general view that such would help to suck out all of that from the economy.
All right, let's go to Kaduna. Professor Joshua Ango, you've been following the conversation, and of course you're following the numbers as released by the CBN and every other segment of society. Quickly, just tell us, what are the potential risks and, if you like, benefits of maintaining the current interest rate?
The CBN, especially the MPC, whenever they are fixing this rate, like the first speaker said, they look at various factors. So they have looked at this. And again, like Prof said, this did not come as a price. So really, there isn't much risk. I think it's in order that we have, we're holding on, to this in view of the realities in the market. Clearly, exchange rate stability is something, and especially the different markets in exchange rate, the difference between them is less than 1%, which is leaving much less opportunity for arbitraging and all that, and round tripping. So that is important. The issue of inflation is also important, especially food inflation. I mean, it's obvious. Government policy actually is driving this. It's another conversation altogether, because what happened is that government had allowed for massive importation of food, to cushion the effect of prices and all that. So that has happened. So again, there's another dimension beyond all this. The recent results of election in the US and the return of Trump has made many countries globally to be watchful. I've seen many other countries looking at their MPCs and holding their MPCs and also holding on. Most of them are holding on, and a few are coming down. Now, this is because they know that some of these policies, as dramatic as some of them are likely going to impact the economies of these various countries. So really, what has happened is not a surprise. It's expected, and it's in line with realities. And like the central bank governor himself said, I think things are turning around. The various policies that have been made, in terms of reforms, from the government side, are now probably becoming, so we are getting some results. And with that, hopefully, with stability, we hope that in future we should see this rate coming down, like Prof said, because reality is still high, relative to the economy.
Professor Ango, thank you very much. But let me stay with you for a moment. Now, the MPC appears to have called, for improved security because of its impact on food prices. So what do you think that the federal government can do to shore up security so that, food prices can get better?
As far as that is concerned, it's an ongoing thing. Just 3 days ago, I was in Gusau, an area I would not have dared to go to, before. So there is a lot of work that is taking place. It's a continuum. It's something that is continuous as far as security is concerned. But what actually caused prices of foodstuff to come down is direct importation of food, and licenses given to importers. And you remember when prices rose so high last year, government came out with a window, and I think they said 150 days window, that they will enable people, to import without any duties and all that and all that. Now, that is being done now, and that is what is really affecting the prices. Like I said, it's another conversation. There is a good side of it, there's another bad side of it. I mean, the immediate relief is that for those who are going to farm, to buy foodstuffs have come down, clearly. And the prices are continuously coming down. And and we have discussed here so many times, that a major cause of inflation is actually food prices. Now, that has been resolved somehow, and it's continuing. Prices are coming down. Now, what will now that lead to in another way is another discussion altogether, because it has the other side of it may not be so palatable, because it means we are now depending on food importation as a solution. So security certainly is important. Security for farmers is important. And like I said, it's an ongoing thing. And I think there's a lot of improvement even on the side of security. It's not completely resolved, but I think, substantially there is progress in that regard.
Professor Joshua Ango, would return to you shortly, but let's get back here in the studio and, of course, engage Ladibala Kefi, MNI, some more. You want banks, to step up and improve liquidity in the foreign exchange market. Just tell us briefly how you expect the banks to do that. And then there's a warning about potential tariff war. What's that about?
Well, the tariff war is actually, as Professor said, following the U.S. election and President Trump emerging as the president. His antecedents shows that when it comes to trade, he focuses more on unilateralism rather than multilateralism. So, America first, that's the slogan. So when you say America first, you're trying to protect your manufacturers. So you will now impose tariffs against imports into your country. And by doing that, they are a global force. America is a huge consumer of goods, and they also produce. So, and they had been taking their productive base to other countries, emerging markets like China, Vietnam, South Korea. And China now started copying and improved on their own productive capacity. And their goods are now cheaper. So they are blocking them. So once this starts, these tariffs and trade wars is going to affect what WTO tries to do to manage trade wars, so that smaller countries are not hurt, bigger countries are not hurt. But when a country decides to go on their own, it's going to disrupt the global supply chain and it's going to disrupt the global market. And when it does that, emerging markets will suffer, like Nigeria. For example, the US, they have a stockpile, they have a stockpile of crude. And Nigeria, we produce crude, we export to the US. But with his own kind of policy, they are going to start, he's not for climate change and so on. So they're going to start producing crude oil in massive ways. And some ways are like fracking and all other models that you can use to get production. So which means once they do that, there will be huge supply in the market. Once there's huge supply, there will be oil glut. It's going to impact negatively on Nigeria because we export, that's our primary source of revenue. When there's too much supply out there to meet demand and even excess, then we'll have a challenge. The tariff was also, as I said earlier, other countries are now saying they're going to retaliate. So it's going to disrupt the total global polity. And it's definitely, no country is in isolation. Countries are interrelated and interconnected. We are at the era of globalization. So it's definitely going to affect us.
Now, the MPC currently emphasizes collaboration between fiscal and monetary policy authorities.
Yeah.
In what areas is this collaboration lacking, and what can be done, to improve it?
Okay, so on the 30th of January, I'm sure you covered what the Central Bank of Nigeria did, which was the Monetary Policy Forum. It had not been held in 20 years until Governor Cardoso took over and said he insisted, he is very big on collaboration as well as communication. How do we communicate our policies to the public for it to be effective? How do we enhance and strengthen collaboration with all sectors of the economy? So we held the Monetary Policy Forum, and that forum we had up to 6 ministers of budget and planning, the coordinating minister for the economy, and his minister of state. We also had Minister of Trade. When we talk of fiscal authorities, a lot of people conclude it's just the Ministry of Finance. No. Trade plays a big role because it's through trade that we can earn revenue.
Yeah.
So whatever they do will impact on our sources of foreign exchange earnings, which will have a direct impact on the reserves, which is in the purview of the central bank. And the more dollar we earn, the more it will stabilize the exchange rate. And Prof earlier said that it was the importation of food that largely contributed to the deceleration of inflation. I'd like to add that including stable exchange rate. And that stable exchange rate, the bank introduced the electronic foreign exchange matching system, which is called the B-Match. We also came up with the Nigerian FX code, and all this is to introduce transparency and ethics and governance in that space. Because in the past, the foreign exchange market was distorted. Banks played the way they liked, and there was no control. But now there is control, and with that control, things are normalizing. And let me quickly conclude on the collaboration between fiscal and monetary policy authorities. The forum, we invited academia, we invited the BDC, the Bureau de Change Association, we invited chambers of commerce. Okay. Everybody that was in the hall was carefully selected. The Senate representative was there, House of Reps, Governors Forum, all the other coordinating agencies, regulators in the financial sector, the insurance sector, the Securities and Exchange Commission, were all represented because there is need for collaboration. If the banking sector is thriving, we need to see that insurance is also moving in the same direction. Right now, the services sector is what is driving the economy, finance and banking. So we need to enhance and strengthen regulation so that we can get optimal benefit from that. And then also with government, by inviting national planning, when we plan, once you sit with other agencies and you plan, then it will enable government to know where to focus on to generate revenue. And then also with the fiscal authorities, it will enable us to know how to manage excess liquidity in the system. So we need to have the same calendar with the fiscal authorities so that to ensure that they are not, whatever they do will not impact on what the banking sector or the central bank is
So are you
trying.
plugging these gaps now?
Yes, we are. So we have, this is one of it. It was a really very successful discourse because we listened more to the stakeholders. The Monetary Policy Forum enabled the governor to hear what no MPC member spoke. It was just the speeches that the governor made and the Deputy Governor Economic Policy just to set the tone for the conversation. And after that, the governor took note of the complaints of everybody. And following that, immediately the BDCs were invited. We held meetings with them. And you can see the central bank has now created a model whereby BDCs can get foreign exchange from banks, so to reduce the scarcity. And then the fiscal authorities also, we've held meetings, several meetings with them on how we will manage our situation.
All right, many thanks, Ladi Balakefe. We'll pause for a break now. When we come back, the conversation continues. Please remain tuned.
They use energy at school.
Your champs need nourishing energy. Give them the new and improved Milo at breakfast.
It has nutrients that support energy release. Milo!
When we think about the digital economy, you can see it as the marketplace for digital goods and services. And increasingly, it's becoming a force to reckon with and an incredible contributor to economic growth, because we've seen the growth in technology and digital platforms. Technology has it really permeated every aspect of life and business, the way we live, the way we work. And when we talk about the digital economy, we're really talking about leveraging technology and digital platforms in a powerful way to drive growth, to drive solutions to problems, to drive applications, and to provide services.
The digital economy is something that has the potential to help Nigeria leapfrog a lot of its development challenges, right? Because think about what the mobile phone did for Nigeria years ago. That is the potential we have for digital, because it has a way of reducing the barriers to innovation. It has a way of being able to transform service delivery, whether it's government's delivery of services or whether it's services in the health system, where people can use digital to actually be able to see their patients better. But it takes a lot to realize that potential of digital. The first thing is like every other thing, there's an infrastructure you have to build to be able to make sure that digital economy can thrive. Think of something like, capturing that happens in Nigeria, right? Where you capture, people's biometric when they go for a driver's license, when they go for passports, and each of those are separate things. Imagine a system where you're able to streamline that and actually have a platform that exchange biometric information that makes it easier for people to access passports, easier for people to register to vote. But today it's very tough, right? But those are basic infrastructure that needs to be invested in. A lot of it is through government and private sector collaborations to make it happen.
If we're looking to accelerate growth in the Nigerian space, we really need to look at enabling the digital economy. That includes providing digital infrastructure, connectivity, because that's the highway, like the highway that everything rides on. We need to think about digital capacity building in terms of the suppliers to the economy and also the consumers within the economy. So a robust digital literacy initiative. The good thing about technology is that, one, it helps you to transcend boundaries. Two, it creates a level playing field, really, because if you create a solution, it's a technology-based solution that is applicable in this environment, that same technology can be applicable, exported to other environments. And, technology platforms also help drive collaboration, right? When we're thinking about innovation, when we're thinking about business growth, collaboration is an important part of that. So when we think about the impacts with the rest of the world, we find that actually technology platforms are giving us an opportunity to engage more actively, to collaborate, to create partnerships, to even export our knowledge and services for people to engage with all the great things I'm talking about technology and digital platforms. They need access, internet access, broadband access. So we need to make sure that access is more available and affordable for the average user.
The most important thing is to think about where you want to go as a country and actually what type of policies are going to help get you there. There are examples of countries who've been able to transform using digital, for example. There are very clear things those countries did to be able to make it happen. So a lot of this, the pathway to be able to solve these problems are not mysterious, right? It takes courage of the policymakers to be able to understudy some of these things and bring in the policies that work to be able to help them.
This Sunday, live on Sporty TV. Real Sociedad vs Leganés. Watch live on Sporty TV. Brought to you by SportyBet. Play with champions.
All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. And our guests are still very much with us talking about the MPC resolutions yesterday. And I'd like to get to Professor Uche Uwaleke now. Earlier when Ladibola Kefi spoke, she talked about the MPC coming up with the resolutions based on data, you know, from different sectors, if you like, segments. You know, I want you to speak to us about this data. You know, the reason I'm asking is because if you go on the street, you know, the average person will still complain about prices being high and all of that. Yes, agreed. Some would say yes for food crops that are currently in season. Yes, a slight decrease. But they would also say, for example, you say you're buying beans at the moment, say for 1,008 as compared to maybe 2,000 in December. But it was never 1,008 as at you know, some months in 2024. I mean, beans was like 450, 500. So I mean, there's a huge difference. So how does this really, you know, shape this conversation, you know, and then does it really match with the resolutions that are reached? I mean, looking at the reality on ground. And then speak to us about, because she's also talked about the rebased consumer price index, you know, being a factor to all of this. Did that really reflect Nigeria's consumption patterns?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I read the communique that came out after that meeting, and in it, the members made reference to the December inflation figure and November inflation figure. They compared the two, and they talked about month-on-month deceleration. Whereas we had a slight increase in inflation rate between November and December of last year, month on month there was a deceleration. Okay, now they didn't compare January and December for obvious reasons, because the two were computed based on different bases. Okay, now you are talking about data. The one that just came out based on the rebased CPI, the 24.48%. Okay, of course, year on year. What it simply means, it doesn't say that inflation rate has come down. That's not what it says. It simply means that prices are coming down. It simply says that prices are rising, but at a slower pace. So when you find the inflation rate, for example, drop from, say, 25 to 24, that doesn't mean that you have deflation. That's the technical term. It simply means that yes, prices have rose or have risen, or prices rose, but at a slower pace. Now, if you look at what the MBS did, which the MPC concurred, they said, and as far as they were concerned, that reflected reality. If you look at what they did, I also mentioned it, I think much earlier. I said what they did was to update the price reference period and the weight reference period. All along, they were using 2009 as base year. Now, you will agree with me that consumption patterns have changed since then. So it made sense to now bring that base year as close as possible to the current year. And that's why they used 2024 as the price reference period. Okay. Now, if you look at the classifications, food is still where the pressure point is. Okay, but food now constitutes 40% of consumption. So what that means is that if you take the average household, based on the study they conducted, the average household spends 40% of his, spends 40% of his total consumption on food. Okay. You also find that the same food is showing up in restaurants. Restaurants increased from 1.2 to 12%. So if you add restaurants, what is spent, by way of meals away from home, if you add that 12 to 40, you still get 52% in terms of what is consumed. Okay. Now, in that classification, transport is also very high, and you will agree with me that transport costs, over time, has also increased. So that classification reflects, reality, unlike what we had in the past. So if you look at that classification now, you find food, the biggest, weights. You have food, you have transport. Okay, you have the restaurant at 12, you have transport at 10.7. Okay, and of course you also have even health and education. They have also increased. People now spend more money on health and education. Recently, I read about just 3 days ago, the inflation number for UK came out. Inflation number in the UK was 2.5% in December. By January, it has gone up to 3%. Meanwhile, the expectation was that it was going to be 2.8%. And to what was it? What was the reason? It was attributed again to food, energy, and also the withdrawal of the exemption on VAT for private, private education, private school fees. So over time, consumption patterns change. So that is what the MBS has reflected, and that's also what the MPC took into cognizance when they also decided to hold. So I think largely data is what should drive the decisions that MPC takes. And I want to commend this idea of the Monetary Policy Forum. You can't overemphasize the need for fiscal and monetary policies, to work in tandem, because the central bank cannot fight inflation alone. And do you know why? Because the factors driving inflation in Nigeria are not entirely monetary factors. This data now by the National Bureau of Statistics has made it obvious that the fiscal side also has a role to play. And that's why I want to ask them to keep up this idea of Monetary Policy Forum. And in future meetings, also consider inviting also the subnationals, maybe finance commissioners. They should be part of that Monetary Policy Forum, because a lot of pressure too comes from the states, from the subnationals. Okay, particularly now that they are what they share by way of FAC, has increased. So most of the time you find the central bank, battling with fiscal surprises, from the subnationals, especially when it comes to the, the forex market. Okay, so that is something commendable, and I want them to keep it up. The idea of fiscal monetary policy, collaboration, you can't overemphasize it, because as far as inflation is concerned, the two must work together, because there are factors that the government too must deal with.
Thank you, Professor Waleke. Let me head to Kaduna to see another prof. Professor Ango, with rising inflation concerns, what role, in your opinion, should fiscal policies play alongside the monetary policies to achieve price stability?
I'll just take it off from where Professor Waleke stopped. He mentioned especially the influence of subnationals. Now, before now, especially last year, we have seen it. I hope it will be better from now on, because what we expected was that since about 1/4 of all our foreign exchange spendings in the previous years was used towards importation of refined petroleum products. Now that has stopped more or less, because we have the Dangote and then the NMPC refineries coming to life. So we expected to see Naira gaining ordinarily, from that, and stabilizing. Maybe what we are getting is also part of it, but that did not happen much last year, because of the influence, in the opinion of many people, that it is anytime there is FAC, then people go with funds, to the Bureau changes and all that, either at local government level or state levels, and convert so much, into foreign exchange. So that affected the stability of what we expected. So what I'm saying is, basically, we need the cooperation of everybody. If we need stability, that stability has to come from every quarter. The fiscal side are doing what they are doing. The monetary side are doing what they are doing. But we need the input and cooperation of every level. And we need the vigilance of everybody to ensure that, anything in terms of taking advantage of the system does not arise. Perhaps if we do that properly, then the growth we are seeing in GDP, which is also going to be rebased, and the growth we are seeing in inflation, or a reduction in inflation that we hope will continue, we will see it. Now, we have seen reduction in food or food-related prices, definitely. But then we have not seen that much in other sectors of the economy. Just this morning I had on radio, a debate between bread makers and those who are selling flour in the market, because prices of wheat has come down, so prices of flour has come down, so and sugar slightly come down. So why are bread costs the same way they are? So what we are saying is that we expect to see a lot more in terms of reduction, of prices, but then for the manufacturers, those who are engaged in various manufacturing activities, they also need to consider that the prices of input have come down, especially with the stability of foreign exchange. And then, hopefully, we should see reduction in interest rate going forward into this year. And with that, hopefully, again, we should see further reduction in inflation.
Thanks, Professor Ango. Everyone, shares the same optimism with you, hoping that, some of these figures will go down, especially inflation and the interest rate. Many thanks. Let's return to Ladibola Kefe as we begin to round up this conversation. You mentioned earlier, of course, this is the first time after 6 consecutive hikes in 2024. It's signaling a pause, to the tightening measure. And you say, well, we're not sure if it's going to loosen some more or if it will continue to tighten, in the coming months. But just let us have, broader implications, of this current decision of the MPC on the economy of Nigeria.
Okay. So the broader implications was, we did some surveys, the statistics department, on household surveys. We also did for manufacturers. We also did, the PMI survey. And from the survey, it's interesting to note that last year there were a lot of pessimism from households that inflation was not going to come down. But from the results we got now, we've seen a reduction in the number of pessimists. And the number of those that are optimistic are increasing.
Does that affect the economy?
Yes, of course. So, if you feel that things will keep going up.
It will?
No. Yes. No, well, not that it will. Not that it will, but it will make you to take a certain decision. Like, instead of you to go to the market and buy things, you may just divert your money somewhere else. But when you are optimistic that prices will go down,
it influences your actions.
It influences your consumption pattern. It influences how you manage your resources. And then again, it's going to have a positive impact on the economy. Even for the manufacturers, we've had steady optimism throughout last year, and it has even increased. So it means that firms believe in what the Central Bank of Nigeria is doing from the survey. And we published the survey. You can go on the CBN website. You will see it. Whether the sentiments are negative or positive, we publish. And we've had consistent optimism from firms that they believe that we will be able to tackle inflation and that the economy will be able to be on an upward trajectory as is desired to suit growth. And let me quickly tell you that, in fact, in the equities market, profits here, the all-share index has increased by over 9%, 9.30%, market capitalization by 12.49%. Also, the industry PMI expanded. So all these are positive signs that the economy will pick up in 2025. And even growth is expected to be at over 4%, and we know we will get there. We've gotten a handle of the exchange rate. We've had accretion to the reserves due to the active policies of the CBN and active drive for diaspora remittances by the central bank's management. Diaspora now have confidence in the Central Bank of Nigeria that they can bring in inflows and it will be managed well. So all these are positives all round. And I will tell you, Prof, talking about our current account balance, our import bill has reduced. And we have a higher surplus of over $6 billion compared with $3.92 billion in Q2 of 2024. These things have triple effect and trickle down impact on the economy. But this, you may not be able to see them immediately, but as we go further, that's why I did not answer your question whether we will tighten or loose. What we see, the direction the economy is going, if there's
depends
need,
on what you're going to do.
That's what. And also we have relatively strong external reserves. And in the monetary sector, money supply has reduced. If money supply reduces by 1.87% year to date, inflation is largely a monetary phenomenon. So if we can manage money supply, which we have done up to date as a result of the hikes,
but the MPC,
we have optimistic outlook for the economy.
The MPC wants banks to improve liquidity in the forex market.
Yes.
How do you expect them to do this actually in practical terms now?
They should develop products that will earn foreign exchange. Our banks mostly rely on government funds going to get deposits from federal government, or they invest in government
bonds,
securities. In developed societies, they have products, and that products will yield revenue for them. So we hope they should develop their R&D, research and development departments of the banks, for them to know which products. There is AFCT, African Continental Free Trade Area. The banks should look at what products should we finance that would be exported, that would earn us foreign exchange.
All right, because of time, many thanks, Ladi. But let's just give a second edge. Did I say a second? A minute edge to the two professors, to share their thoughts going forward, what the Nigerian economy would.
Well, less than a minute. I am optimistic. I share in the optimism. I think when I came here early this year on your program, and I told you, in my view, the worst is over. I think I have reason to believe that 2025 will be a lot better than 2024.
Professor Ango, I'd like to hear from you. 60 seconds.
That the trajectory is good. I want government to now, instead of relying on importation for food, to now do something in terms of supporting local production by trying to see how they can come up with mechanisms that will reduce the cost for the farmers. That would be a good thing that will sustain the prices or the achievement we have had in terms of prices of foodstuffs.
Your final words as we round off.
My final words will be the audience should be optimistic and be rest assured that the Monetary Policy Committee and the management team of the Central Bank of Nigeria are determined to bring down inflation and stabilize the exchange rate at all costs. And they will do whatever it takes to ensure that they achieve that. Currently, the governor of the central bank is being acknowledged as credible, transparent, because of all the policies he's been churning out with his deputies, and we are back to the global stage. They just returned from the first inaugural conference that was held by the IMF in Saudi Arabia, Emerging Markets Economies, and he was one of the panelists. We haven't had such for a while, where the central bank governor will be at the global stage telling our own story to the other side. And we are also now very active in bilateral trade discussion, which is part of the fiscal and monetary policy coordination. We provide information on the macroeconomy, and we also go with trade and foreign affairs and the Ministry of Finance to assure them that you can repatriate your profits. So the environment is good as long as the banking sector and the financial sector is concerned. So please keep on having hope in the Central Bank of Nigeria that we're getting it right. We're on that way.
All right, thank you so much. The takeaway from me is be optimistic. Victor, are you pessimistic or optimistic?
I'm in between.
Okay, many thanks, Ladi Balak, FEM and I, Acting Director, Monetary Policy Department, Central Bank of Nigeria. It was a pleasure to have you, and we hope that all of this optimism would actually bring about the Nigeria that we truly want. Professor Uche Waleke, President of the Association of Capital Market Academics, many thanks for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you more in this kind of outfits, of course.
Thank you.
Professor Yushua Anga, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship and Deputy Vice Chancellor Academics, Kaduna State. It was a pleasure to have you again, Prof. Many thanks for your time and your insights on the program. All right, so that's Good Morning Nigeria this Friday. I'm optimistic it's going to be a great weekend. I hope you are too. I'm Henry John, living locked on the NTA.
And I'm Victor Azu. Enjoy the rest of your day, and of course, have a great weekend.